Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Dallas Tyler Adair Jr., George Dayton Adams, Ronald Harrison Albright, Gary Allen, Harry Arlo Amesbury Jr., Warren Leroy Anderson, Angelo Joseph Apriliano, Samuel Earl Asher, Joshua Abraham Atkins III, Jerry Bagley, Eldon Allen Baker, Michael Joseph Balichek, Bruce Harold Barden, Clifford C. Barnett Jr., Fred Edward Barnett, Thomas Melvin Barrow Jr., Brent John Baumert, George Rogers Bennett, Stanley J. Benson, Donald Lee Bernard, Lynn Seaton Bierma, Beryl Stanley Blaylock, Donnie Rex Boggs, Paul Dwayne Boyette, Peter Kestudis Boyev, Leo Myers Breland, John Gilbert Broadbeck, Robert Lee Brown, David Allen Brown, Richard Tyrone Brown, Russell David Burgess, Jean Michael Burkell, James David Burns, Theodore Hughes Burton, Larry Wayne Butler, Michael Francis Campbell, Thomas J. Carroll, Robert Jerome Carter, Charles William Chandler, Nathaniel Buster Clark, Tony Clough, Harris Lester Collins, Calvin Coolidge Cook Jr., Joseph Michael Cornelison, Harley Richard Cowan, Randall Lewis Crabtree, Dennis Martin Craver, Jess William Creason Jr., Dale Alton Kroll, Thomas Francis Cummings, Dana Cornell Darnell, Robert Nelson Davis, Robert Wendell Davis, William Charles DeWeese, Peter Francis Donnell, James R. Dorsey Jr., Wilfred Draper, John Francis Dudash, Donald Keith Dudley, Richard Edward Dunn, James Boyd East Jr., George Elwood Eaton, Shelley Egley, Michael John Estoshan,
Michael Thomas Evans, Richard Henry Fanning, Emmanuel Salvatore Fenech, Darrell Edward Fisher, William Leroy Fix, Jerry Bernard Formey, Billy Rex Foster, Patrick Philip Francisco, John Alvin Franklin, Russell Rickland Fyan, Francisco M. Garcia Jr., Larry Frederick Geiger, David Jerome Geiser, Guy Clifton Gettings, Robert Joseph Getty, Richard James Goggin, Johnny Lee Graham Jr., Francisco Gregory, Lindy Rowland Hall, Mark John Hanson, Steve Altman Harding, Carrie Dean Harmon, David Lewis Hardy, William Thomas Hedgepath, Stephen Clinton Hefner, Robert John Henry, Danny Edward Heroux, Ronald Dickerson Hines, Tillman Powell Hitchcock, Wayne Henry Hoffner, Doyle Edward Holtzlander, Donald Russell Hoskins, Roy Darrell Humphrey, William Robert Jennett, Kenneth Lee Johnson, James Edward Johnson, Jr., Isaac Jones, Robert James Keenan, Terry Joe Kenny, Charles Ray King, Udell Leo Cotros, Mark John Kuzma, Roy Allen Lamon, Leonard Oscar Laporte, Robert Edward Lee, Milton Arthur Lee, Mark Stephen Lennon, Everett Ralph Maharg, Jeffrey Raymond Maloney, Francis Joseph McCann, Jr., William McCaskill, John Lewis McDaniel, James J. McKinstry, Jr., Dwight Allen McNeese, William Michael Meyer, Edward Francis Miles, Eddie Lee Miller, Fred Anthony Miller, Kenneth Dwight Morgan, Walter F. Morris, Kurt Muller, Jr., James Francis Murray, Willie James Murray, Burnett Neal, Jr.,
Calvin Ian Nesbitt, Ronald Ellis Newman, Robert James Nicklin, Donald William Noel, Daniel Jerome O'Connor, Gerard Francis O'Connor, Richard James Olson, Kenneth William Orton, Jr., David Ronald Page, Larry Douglas Parr, Herman Howard Payne, Troy David Payne, Jr., Perry Lee Peoples, Albert Allen Peterson, Donald William Pratt, Thomas Alfred Pro, Ricky Allen Proctor, Dennis Edward Purcell, John Francis Quinn, Seth Earl Randolph, Thomas Edward Rowbolt, Kermit Anthony Ray, Edward Daniel Riley, Jr., Frank J. Rippertella, Jr., Don Mark Robertson, Robert Lee Rogers, Richard Lee Russell, Jeffrey D. Sanders, David Eric Shelvin, Frederick Lee Shrikungost, David Skolnick, William Cleason Sellers, Charles Robert Sink, James Christopher Smith, Raymond Julius Smith, Larry Eugene Smith, Ricky Dale Southern, Michael Jeff Stevens, Nathaniel H. Stevens, Jr., Michael Paul Stiles, Marcus William Stoddard, Lilburn Ray Stowe, Earl Philip Summersill, Walter Lee Swain, Terry Lee Tebbets, Robert Earl Terrell, James Willie Terry, Ernest Leroy Thorson, Larry Richard Todd, Manuel Romero Torres, Edward Scott Toe, Robert Lee Trisdale, James Hale Tucker, Richard Lynn Turley, James Lewis Turner, James Damian Vailov, William F. Vandervoort, Jr., Jose Gilberto Vasquez, Vincent Vasilius, Richard Howard Walker, Beverly Costner Ware, Alfonso Augustus Webb, Kurt Frederick Weissman, Bruce Reginald Williams, Joe Williams, Jr., Larry Alden Winchester, Kenneth Wayne Wolfe, David Beavers Wood, Alton Darnell Woodruff, Robert Lee Worrell, Edward Joseph Zewart, Jr.,